This is the Hex Icosa price on the Ethereum. We're calling it Ethereum 2.0, or I suppose on Ethereum 2.0. And a few people have talked about this. Because you can you take your hex, turn it into an HSI and sell it to the contract. And for Icosa, what that actually does is give a kind of ceiling price of Icosa. And what we've noticed is that when it peaks up, people have arbed it down. And the reason that it stayed so pretty much true to that line is, I think, because of the demand of Icosa. It's just showing that, because there's no reason that it can't stay down here. But at the moment, we have 90% of Icosa's staked, and everyone gearing up, wanting their Icosa staked for these auctions. And so hitting that price, it just shows the demand of Icosa. But people shouldn't think that in the future, that's always going to maintain that. Like, yes, there'll be a ceiling, but it could still play around in here. And we also see a slight, actually, Gifford, do you have those graphs which show the angles? Because what most people have noticed is that is actually tracking like that angle is actually tracking the T-share price. It's got the same angle of inclination. And so Icosa over time is going to get more and more valuable compared to Hex, but only very, very slightly. Unless, of course, it drops down if the demand drops. And so if you're providing liquidity, the thing about this is, because everyone knows about this, everyone is putting in those tight ranges. And so they're probably not making so much. And so in terms of liquidity providing, what you want is high volume and not too much price movement. I started doing this, LPing for this, and then when everyone started jumping into it, I just kind of didn't think it was really worth it, because people were really starting to put in tight ranges, and it just you couldn't make a lot of money from it. And I've got up here as well this same phenomena happening on the proof of work chain, although you can't see the angle up on the proof of work chain yet. It doesn't look like. Maybe it's too subtle, I'm not sure. And then on the Ethereum Fair, it also is tending towards that same thing. Although it looks like the demand is a little bit less on there. But yeah, so in terms of... Mm-hmm.
I just had a question. Just I think a lot of people are probably wondering too, the difference providing liquidity on the forks. You know, do they need to use another DEX to do that? Like how are you doing LP on the different ones?
Well, you've got. I mean, on the Ethereum 2.0, you've obviously got the choice between version 2 Uniswap and version 3. In version 2, you have to put in both sides, and so you can never actually go 100. You never actually 100% go into any of those sides. But in V3, you can just put one-sided liquidity in. So, for instance, if I put a whole lot of hex in here at this range, what it would mean is that every time that the price dips into there, I'm selling my hex for Icosa and I'm getting Icosa. If you put the Icosa above, it means you're getting hex for that Icosa that you have put in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
so on proof of work, you also have V3 and V2. And I think on Ethereum Fair, you have V2. You probably have V3 now as well. I actually haven't gone too much on the other chain. So I went over initially and just started providing liquidity, but I did V2 so that I wouldn't be, so that I'd always be in the game for those. And I just kind of thought I'd leave it and see what happens. Because
is it just flipping something to MetaMask and connect to Uniswap normally, or do you need to do anything special?
To provide liquidity, you can go to Uniswap and it just says, maybe I can pull it up. Oh, yeah, go away. I don't know, what is it? This is just the Uniswap front end, and you just basically. Actually, I'm not gonna. Oh, my things are damn doxed. Okay. So basically, you just press pull, and then V2 and V3 will have different ways of providing that liquidity. And you know what? The proof of work and Ethereum Fair are actually really good places to play to try it out without too much risk. You know, just play with. You don't have to put any extra money over there. Just play with what you've already got over there. The Hex-Hedron pair is pretty interesting to provide liquidity for. I like that a lot. Let's see if we can bring that.
Are the hex pairs against derivatives and things like that, are they less risky than, for example, against USDC or against ETH? Like, how would you kind of explain that?
Well, it really depends where you want to play. Like, if you just keep everything paired with Hex, like Hex-Hedron, Hex Icosa, Hex Maxi, anything like that, you're basically just playing within the Hex ecosystem. And so, but if you're doing it against USDC, like if Hex pumps, you end up getting stuck with USDC. So the real danger in providing liquidity, I might just stop sharing this. The real danger in providing liquidity is that let's say you put a whole lot of Hex in, and so if the Hedron price dips, you're buying. No, sorry, you put in Hex in. So if the Hedron price pumps, you're selling that. I always get this confused. Okay,
no worries.
So if you're providing Hex on the Hex-Hedron liquidity pair, and the Hedron price dips in terms of Hex, you're getting more and more Hex. So you're buying the Hedron. You're buying the thing that's going down in value. If you're putting Hedron, then and the price of Hedron goes up in terms of Hex, then you're selling your Hedron into Hex. So whichever way it goes, you're ending up with the opposite thing. So if you think that the Hedron price is going to dip, what you can do is put a whole lot of Hex liquidity in there, and as the price of Hedron dips, you're buying all of that Hedron, but then the trick is to pull it when you think it's bottomed out. And then the Hedron price goes up and you've made money because you're holding that thing that you dollar cost average in towards the bottom. And the same in the opposite way around. And so it's a great way to buy dips, and it's also a great way to sell tops, but you are still speculating on which way the price is going. And the price can run away from you. So let's say you provide Hex-Hedron liquidity and Hedron sinks way down to the bottom, so it's worth hardly anything. So you've got a ton of Hedron now. If that starts going up, back up again, you're selling it back into Hex. But if you pull it, then that Hedron price goes up. Alternatively, if it keeps on going down, then you end up just with the thing which is valued less.
Is that what we're seeing when, a bunch of Hex liquidity pulled or a bunch of, whatever coin liquidity pulled? Is that people trying to, they suspect the market's going to do something to try to protect themselves?
I think there's probably many reasons. I think partially you can do it as a kind of hedge. So you think, like, especially if you do it against USDC, like if you've got a whole lot of Hex, but you're afraid the price of Hex is going to drop, then you can chuck USDC in there. So you're buying up all of that Hex as it goes down. So it's kind of a hedge.
Yeah, USDC is absolutely fantastic for limit orders, right? Like if you think if we're in, like, say we're in this bear market right now, right? And we want to try to scoop up a bunch of Hex on the next dip. Say we're anticipating that next dip. then you can go in and use V3 and just take all your USDC and set it below that range. And it'll make you go in all 100% below that range because that's not where the price is trading at, right? So then the anticipation is as that price dips through that range, and you want to keep that range tight. Keep the range very tight. As it dips through that range, it will unload you of your USDC and load you up in that hex. And then you pull your liquidity. Now you've just turned all your USDC into hex. And then you can use the same strategy on the way up. You just say wherever we're at, and you're like, all right, I'm going to DCA in a certain amount. I'm going to get rid of 1 million hex, right? You do a one-sided V3 liquidity right here. As the price goes through it, you get filled. You're left with USDC and no more hex. And then you pull your liquidity, right? And that is the best way to treat a chart with respect, right? If you don't want to be that guy who just dumps 1 million or 2 million or 10 million on the market and affects price, and it just messes with the psychology of the chart, then you can use these V3 positions to your advantage, right? Which is awesome. And, we've been talking in this ecosystem, we've been talking about, never selling your hex for a long time now, thanks to Icosa, right? So you'd be using the same strategy with Icosa to enter or exit, particularly to exit, right? Like say you got 5 million hex stake that's coming due, and you've set that aside as that's my profit stake. So I'm taking profit no matter what, right? So when that hex stake comes out, you take that 5 million, you stake it Quattrocinco, you sell it to the Icosa contract, and you get all this Icosa, right? Now what you want to do is you want to do V3 liquidity with that Icosa just above the current ceiling price, and you want to get that set before the T-share rate jacks up, right? When we see a T-share rate jack up, that ceiling price jacks up, right? So you just set a very thin trading range above where you're at, 100% Icosa. Other side, obviously, USDC, but you don't put any in there because you're 100% in Icosa. When the ceiling price jacks up and people start buying because they see, oh, this is at a discount. This is the premium ain't so high. They buy right up through your liquidity. So and that allows you to sell all that Icosa for the USDC without doing this. Here, pull up my chart real quick. Without doing this. Right?
Yeah.
You don't want to do that to the price chart because you're going to eat massive slippage, and it's just bad psychology for the chart. But if you set it like right here, if you see us bumping up along this 35% premium, and you see on Hexfire Hexfire.io, shout out Crispy Man, jump over there, look at when those T-share rates are going to jack up. Be like, all right, I'm just before we should be seeing it jack up. Set your liquidity right here. And then as it pumps through your liquidity, you're filled. And there will be none of this huge
and you get
off of a cliff price action and losing all this slippage.
And you get all the fees as well, obviously. So that's
what a lot of people say, like, why would I provide liquidity? The fees maybe aren't that good. Maybe like, oh, is it worth the trouble? But you can also use liquidity providing to sell without pushing the price against you.
Yeah,
buy or sell. Yeah.
And you're going to see liquidity providing become way more popular once the market turns around. When we start to see all the people coming back to crypto, there's going to be a lot more transactions. If you thought the transactions we saw in the last bull run was a lot, wait till you see this next bull run. It's going to be insane. And that's where people who really understand how to set these positions, they can actually really make a really good profit. And that's because you need that volume. You need that volume churning in order to get to collect enough fees to make it worth it. Right now, I mean, you might as well have an Icosa stake because that is where the premium is going to be made right now.
Beautiful. That's one of the questions. Where do you? I think earlier too. I mean, I got a few more questions on the doc, but also
just one more quick thing I want to talk about. I just remembered something. So there's a kind of balancing act as well in terms of if you provide a very thin range of liquidity, then that means a lot more of your whatever you have is going to be in that range, and so you're collecting a lot more fees within that range. Whereas if you do a greater range, you'll get less fees because your money is spread out over a bigger range. But it means that the price can't run away. It's less risky for the price to run away from you. So if you have this price here and you've set an order there and you think the price is going to go up and then it's going to come down, and you set it there, so then you pick it up there and then you pull a liquidity and hold it waiting for it to go back down. But instead what happens is it keeps going up, which that means that you're stuck with the shittier thing while the price keeps pumping up.
Impermanent loss.
That's what impermanent loss is. Yeah. And that's the real danger. So if you have a wider range of liquidity, there's less risk of that. But you can't be making as much on fees. So it's a balancing act.
Oh, there's a comment in there. I think, Steven, your Watson winner. He said he's going to practice LP on ETHW. And yeah, if you use the Uniswap front end that Alex built out on Hedron.pro, that is Uniswap V3. So you can use that exchange to set your V3 positions.
Uniswap.hedron.pro.
Exactly. Yep.
And you can change that for ETHFair as well, I believe.
It doesn't work on ETHFair, and the go-to market on ETHFair is the FairSwap, and that's a V2 version.
Okay,
so if there's a V3 out there somewhere, somebody's gonna have to let me know because I haven't found it yet.
Oh, okay. I thought there was a V3, but no. That's what I've got in ETHFair. It's on V2 because at the time that's the only one I could do. I thought that all of the Uniswap. See, I don't understand that. If you can get Uniswap on ETH proof of work, why wouldn't it just be on ETHFair automatically as well?
Well, it's just not automatic. You have to just set it up to do so. And Alex
hasn't pointed the V3 pools. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but there is the Kyber swap, and I don't know if Kyber swap lets you do that or not on ETHFair, because I know you could do something similar. That'd be the one I would look to.
That's also a great way to you can compare. You know what I mean? Provide liquidity on V2 on ETHFair and play around with V3 liquidity on proof of work, and it's pretty low risk. The gas fees are hardly anything. You've got all of your free coins over there already, tokens, over there already. So they're great places to learn all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, last time we were talking about here. Let me pull up my doc again, but this time for one of the other networks.
Hex
so here we go.
Hex Maxi pair is a little bit tricky because the Maxi premium over it's always going to go up compared to Hex because it's earning Hex every day. And so if you're going to do against the Hex Maxi pair, I don't think there's a lot of liquidity. So you might want to check out on how much liquidity there is there, but you're going to have to constantly adjust your range and not use V2 because I don't think that. So
there's actually, this has actually been a lot of fun using these other networks, because one thing it does allow you to do is when your Hex stakes ends and you're trying to figure out what play you want to do, you can actually just go on to one of the other networks where your stakes probably exist anyways because they were done pre-merge, right? And you can go and just perform those actions on the other chain before you do it on the Ethereum main chain. So that's been kind of nice. So you basically have 3 chains to run your end stake function on Hex if it predates the merge. So that's pretty cool. And another cool thing to look at is the fact that Blue had alluded to it earlier about how it's kind of holding that ceiling price. And that is absolutely true. The Icosa Hex kind of arb price, the Icosa arb price is definitely hanging right around the ceiling price. So it's interesting that this is working on the other chain. So there's ETH POW, and then you can also pull up.
Oh, Stoltz says there's 2. Mm-hmm. 2 different finance for V3 on ETF.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Throw the links in there. Or tell us where.
Tell us where, Sam, when you get a chance.
It's also interesting. I actually tried starting a pair, and I tried the maxi Icosa pair because I thought that they might go up in a similar way. But I don't think there wasn't much traffic. There wasn't much like trading going on with it. But
no, there's not. There really isn't.
It was really fun to actually just go through like opening a pool for the first time because there wasn't a maxi Icosa pool. And so you could probably play with that as well. Like, how do you set the price? How do you decide what the first price is for a pool that you're setting up?
Well, that's the cool part when you do it. So I was practicing with that with Icosa Hex. So like the ceiling price. So you just set your range right through that ceiling price, and that ceiling price exists on these other markets. The only thing that I've found that is really interesting that's been changing a lot is the Hex T-shirt rate slowed down on the proof of work on W and F. They slowed down. So now you've got the Hex T-shirt rate on the Ethereum main chain at 24,900 something, and then on the proof of work chain, it's like 24,400 something, and on the fair chain it's 24,383. So the only thing I can chalk this up to is those larger hex whales that were ending their stakes and jacking up the T-shirt rate on the main chain. They're not following suit on the other two chains anymore.